Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, back in the saddle with you today, Brien Gearin. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I am joined by Shannon Jean. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's a podcaster. He's a best-selling author. Honestly, there's not a lot this man hasn't done. He's started 10 businesses. He's sold 4 of them. And I believe he is the master at making money in unconventional ways. So Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. This is going to be great. So I think what we want to dive into today, I mentioned, I think you're the master at making money in unconventional ways. There's so many different ways in this world to make money. There's so much abundance out there. And I think a lot of us start our businesses as a side hustle. I did that. I started my business on the side and grew it into my entrepreneurial endeavor, if you will. But there's a bit of an art form from going from side hustle into business. And I want to dig deeper on that today with you because you've done this multiple times, 10 businesses,
Sure.
You've sold 4 of them, right? So I kind of want to hop right in there. Can you share with us a little bit about your origin story? And then let's talk about your first or your best experience in turning a hustle into a business.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. I think side hustles, when I started, I don't even know if that term was around, right?
Yeah.
But I've been doing this for a long time, about 25 years. And, when I got out of college, I really didn't have this big urge to go work for someone else. I had already started doing deals. And when I was in college, I was running a landscape construction company. And, the amount of money I could make, it was amazing to me that people, would write these big checks, and me and all my buddies that worked for me. But then I really fell in love with technology, with the Mac, and it made me look so much smarter than I really was with that business, and I could charge a lot more. So I just had this idea, and I was like, hey, I'm going to figure this side hustle out. While my other company was running, making money, I was just getting ready to get out of school. I thought, how do I learn about this technology to where I could, maybe I could start a business with it, but I didn't know anything. Nobody would hire me. I went around all these, in my college town, like, hey, I want to work here. I didn't know anything about this stuff. So I volunteered at a local company. I was like, look, just let me come. Let me just hang out. I'll help you with sales. I know how to sell stuff. And so I got another buddy of mine who's an engineer. We hung out, learned some stuff. By the time, we were done, we'd helped them a lot, 6, 8 months. We started this, my first, I would say, big company that, took off. It was a company called Mac Rescue that eventually became Rescue Systems. And they're still around today. And the thing that I learned in that first time kind of taking this side hustle avenue is to follow the energy. Is what, like, it takes a lot of energy to get started. I was pushing, like, go. I'm going to figure this thing out. But it didn't take very long for the energy to kind of start flowing back to me, where I was energized by the concept, by the work I put in, by the results, by seeing things, and I would say, when you're starting, don't have blinders on of this is the way it's going to work. This is how I'm going to make money. This is the business we're going to be in. Because when we started that business, I kind of thought we were going to come back up to the Bay Area, and I live near San Francisco, and we're going to start kind of a repair business, get the computers. We're going to maybe open some multiple locations, but nothing like that happened. We caught the wave, like Charlie Munger says. The internet was just taking off. The web was starting to go. And all of a sudden, I was connecting with people all over the country, all over the world. And what I realized is that the parts of these systems and all the components were where the value was. It was easy to buy a whole system. You just go to the store, but people had a hard time getting the components. And that opened up, it changed the whole trajectory of that side hustle, and built a company, where we ran it for a decade. We were in a 50,000 square foot facility, a ton of employees, and we did, deal after crazy deal, and kind of learned about the liquidation space and the broken product space, salvage stuff, and doing repairs. And man, it really set me on a trajectory of having a really wide bandwidth of what could happen. And while that first business was running, I started my second business, and then I just kind of kept growing. And they were more experiments, I would say, than side hustles. You call them a side hustle now, especially if you're doing something else and you're trying to get involved. But I have this concept I call the $1,000 brain switch. If you can figure out how to make your first $1,000, the sky is the limit. It's the first money that people have a hard time with, in my experience, when I'm coaching people or I'm an advisor, helping them out. How do you make that first $1,000? And that gives you so much energy back. You're like, man, I could be independent. If something really went wrong, I could figure out how to make money. And I learned that, when I was young, and I just kept leaning into that and putting as much energy behind it as possible. And I've done it a bunch of times. I've just had a great time, man.
So what was it from you were running a successful landscape company, and did it get to that point? You said it was doing well and making money. So it got to a certain point where would you say that you were you bored? You were curious? What was it that made you like, cuz I could see someone getting to that business and be like, "Hey, we're doing great. Let's keep doing the main thing and keep making more and more and getting bigger and bigger." Was that part of your plan, or did it get to a point where like, "Hey, we're doing well, but this thing over here, this looks interesting."
Yeah, you've used the key word that's driven me my whole life. It's boredom. If I get bored, man, like I love chaos. Chaos is not the enemy. I thrive in it and I love problem solving, but I'm not a good maintenance person. So, when I start to get bored or I think I've kind of figured it out. And you're right. I could have stayed with that company, done really well, and I'm sure grown it and, had a great life. But there's all these opportunity costs. And if you ignore things that really pique your interest, that's what I've done. I've tried to go down a rabbit hole, and, a lot of times nothing would come of it. I would chase it. Hey, I can't really make this work. I can't figure this out. I tried to I've started 10 companies that have been successful, but I'm sure I've had 10 that have failed, that it just never got anywhere. So boredom is the enemy. The minute I start to get bored, now as I learn more and I kind of got more, I would never call myself sophisticated, but as I just got more comfortable and familiar, I did learn to get, a great general manager, a great operator, and have them do these things and that allowed me to go while I, was running one company, I didn't have to leave it to go do the next thing. I had like my base of operations. And so I said, okay, I want to start a web-based business. I wanted to send my kids to private school, but it was $1,000 a month and I didn't have that, and so I, I had an idea for a business and I told my wife, said, hey, we're going to figure this out. You're going to have to help me. So from 10 to midnight for 2 years, we sat down at our dining room table and we started this business. It was called Deals on the Web. And I met a guy who had a good traffic website, got him involved as a partner, and we built it. So I was running, rescue systems during the daytime, hang out with my family till my kids get to bed, 10 o'clock, my wife and I would jump back. And we published this daily edition of Deals because I'm just a deal guy. I love finding great deals. And eventually, after a year, it started making a little bit of money. But after 18 months, 2 years, we were able to hire somebody so we could step back. And then it started generating, I needed that $1,000 a month. But by the time, that business ran for almost a decade and it was generating, our monthly revenue was like 30 grand. So all along the ways, I always had this foundation. It's almost like I had a W-2, right? Because some these companies, once they got big enough, I just start taking a paycheck and bonus and all bonuses and stuff. But all the employees get paid before I did. You kind of you got to take care of them. They got all this kind of stuff. So you can leverage what you're building, whether maybe it's a W-2 job you have somewhere else. There's always time to carve out of your day. In my case, for that business, we did it at night, 10 to midnight, every night, 2 hours. We just sat down and my wife was my accountability partner. I was hers. She did this kind of stuff. And it was great.
So how did you draw the line of distinction between, because I think it's really common with entrepreneurs and those of us who have that visionary personality and mindset to get distracted and to maybe, start a business and kind of get halfway through it and then think, ooh, that over there looks really cool. I want to go chase that. How did you avoid, or did you avoid the pitfalls of losing your focus on what you were doing in terms of developing something to make money? It sounded
Yeah.
like you kind of had your baseline and then you were able to. So was that a distinction between how you used your focus?
Yeah. So I don't really believe, I think multitasking is a lie, but I do believe in, I call it multi-focus. So carving up your day into chunks where it's like, okay, 8 to 10, I'm working on this business, I'm doing this, and then I'm going to meet with everybody that has to go and do these things. And you have to have good people around you to then implement that stuff, right? And then, 10 to 12, you're going to meet this, do this, play around with this project, do this, maybe that's going to work. So always having an experiment in kind of bubbling around, that really helped me. And a lot of those experiments didn't work, but enough of them worked where it made a difference. But I would focus on this experiment for a while. I always give myself, like, it takes a long time. I have to put a year into a project. When I wanted to start a software company, it was the stupidest thing I thought of. But I was like, I'm doing all the sales, and I need these tools, and everybody else needs these tools. So I got a partner who I thought was going to be great, and we put some time and effort into it, and it never went anywhere. After about 10, 11 months, I wasn't feeling the energy. I just was like, man, all I'm doing is giving. But my part of that project was to create a ton of content around this marketplace that I was selling on. It was another experiment. And so I had all this content. Our partnership went sideways. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I've always wanted to write a book. So I took that content and I published this book called Poshmark Unlocked. And it, crazy, by that time I had about 300,000 followers on Poshmark as another experiment business that I was trying. And so that book took off and sold like crazy. So it's keeping your options really open. And everything you create has value. It just may not, I almost guarantee that it's not going to come to fruition the way exactly in your head. So keeping my options open, sometimes those shiny objects, yeah, they failed, but you turn that, what you learned into something else.
Were there shiny objects per se, or experiments that you went against your better judgment and dove into, or I guess vice versa? You looked at them and said, maybe gave it a week or so, and you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, no, I should not go do that. Did you have any of those types of experiences?
Yeah, I still, I can't help myself. I walk around, I just look and like, how does that guy make any money? How does this work? And I'm, cleaning taking care of my pool in my backyard. And I'm just like, gosh, I should start a pool service because this is
Yeah.
crazy, or the maintenance, my gardener comes every week, and I was like, I could help that guy. We could just blow this business up, man. And, we're in California, so they're like forcing you to convert to electric and battery operated tools for the garden and all this,
Oh gosh.
stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. But I can't help. I was like, well, there's an opportunity there. I don't necessarily agree with the policy, but I could start a business that, leaned into that idea and got people on board. So I think about that stuff all the time. Do I take action on it? No. Some of it I do. Like one of my businesses, Tech Restore, we had, ran for about a decade, did great, made great money, had a bunch of employees. But I get to that point where I wasn't bored, but I'm not great at maintenance. And so we sold that business in 2017. I was probably a year late. I should have sold sooner, but it was okay. They're still in business. And I wanted to try something new. I said, okay, I'm not going to sell anything with a plug anymore. I'm out of consumer electronics because I'd done that for so long. And so I researched and did this shiny object things like, what can I sell? But what I learned is that, like, my wife, her friends, my daughter, they would go nuts over these like designer handbags. And I said, well, this is weird. I don't know anything about this stuff, right? I know. I mean, I buy my clothes at Costco. So I was like, I'm going to try this out, figure out how to do it. And the first thing I did was I just started buying from other people that were selling, just to see the experience and see, are they any good at it? how's their box experience? How's their customer service? How's the sale? How's all these things? And I just noticed that they were not that great, but they were still selling and doing pretty well. And I was like, you know what? I can compete in this market. And so I started swimming upstream and finding where I could buy bags. I started small. It was a side hustle. So I didn't take much risk. I bought inexpensive products and sold them to learn. And it's like a muscle, right? You have to learn how to do it. And so I was investing, hundreds and, then thousands, and then learning. Oh, I made a mistake. I screwed up. But, within, I don't know, 3 years, I did like 3.7 million in sales of those handbags, made about a $500,000 in profit. And it was just me. And I wanted to do it. My concept was I'm going to sell 10 bags a day, make 50 bucks a bag, but I only want to work an hour. Right. And so on this project, and it didn't work out like that at all. It was, I could sell, because I wanted to make 500 bucks a day, 100 grand a year. And I wanted to be able to talk about it and tell the story. But it turns out as I moved up the food chain, it was way better to sell one bag and make 500 bucks than 10. And so that's what I adjusted to. And eventually, I would just ship a few orders a day. It was a great business until I got bored. and so, and then I was like, well, and then I wrote the book. I wrote that book about it. And then I wrote eBay Unlocked, which is another one. And that hit the bestseller, on Amazon. And, so experimenting with those side hustles is really important because you don't know what you don't know. And I talk about liquidation stuff on X all the time, and that gets everybody excited, auctions and stuff, because that's where have bought tons of my stuff. And it allows you to kind of experiment and understand, like you can invest whatever you can afford to lose, right? When you start.
Right.
And don't go borrow, $50,000 and mess around. Can you go spend $1,000 and see if you can turn that 1,000 into two, and then put a little bit more energy into it, a little more energy into it.
Well, and with the example of your handbags business, I mean, so I kind of want to go down a rabbit hole a bit there. This opportunity presented itself, and you decide to go experiment on it. Put a couple of dollars into buying some, see if you can sell it for a little bit more, and then continue to climb that ladder. What platform were you using? Were you buying from like a wholesaler and then selling on Amazon, or?
So I got interested in it because I have this podcast called Business Brain. We've been doing it for like 10 years. And I had some younger guys on, and they were all talking about social commerce. And I didn't even know what that was. I was like, I gotta, I'm getting old here. I gotta keep up. I gotta figure this stuff out. So I started researching these social commerce apps, and Poshmark was one of those. And I was like, man, this is really interesting. All this massive sharing and following and all this kind of stuff. It's very different than eBay, which I've dealt with for decades. So I just started trying to find suppliers. So that you make your money on the buy side. In the product business, it's always what you buy. If you buy right, your sales will follow and you'll do great. And I had some people not quite in that business, but kind of on the side of it. I have we could talk about my watch side hustle if you want, but so I have this other thing. And so I just started asking questions, and then it took me, 8 or 9 months. And then all of a sudden I got introduced to a supplier, and I was buying from them. And then I was buying at auctions, and then I learned how to buy from overseas. I was buying from auction houses in Japan. And so I spent most of my time buying and then bringing over and learning the process of how do you sell on these platforms? What do these people look for? I had an unfair advantage is my name is that most of the people I'm selling to are women, and they were more comfortable buying someone with their first name Shannon. And I always, in every photo of myself on the platform, I always had my wife next to me, so they weren't really sure what they were buying, and that was great. Yeah, but until I hit like $1 million in sales on Poshmark, and then they invited me to their headquarters. And so I go out there, and they were like, "Who are you, dude?"
Who's this dude?
I think I had a beard or something like that. So it was great. But I got to meet them. I met the CEO, and the benefit was like I was the competition was There's some great sellers on there now that are killing it and do really, really well, and it's gotten much more sophisticated. But when I started, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago with that project, I was selling against people, just most of them selling stuff out of their house, right? Something in their closet. So I came in, I had, crazy, my photography, stuff I knew from my other businesses. It all stacked up. So I knew the importance of great images. I knew the importance of credibility and offering, hey, if you don't fall in love with it, I had this thing called love it, or just send it back. It's no big deal. I didn't care. And I wasn't behind the 8 ball on money. So it was easy for me to say those kinds of things like, oh, just, you don't love it, take it, bring it back. And so I was able to have a big impact pretty quick, like a big fish in a small pond, if you will.
Okay. So that's fascinating. So it's not like you had a background in handbags. The
No,
opportunity presented itself. You
nothing.
right. You studied
I
it.
know nothing.
You learned what was right and wrong, or what worked and what didn't work. In areas like this, was this all part of the experiment, or did you have where there's people that you learned from? Were there courses you took, or was it just I'm going to dive in, I'm going to learn from the school of hard knocks, I'm going to learn what works and what doesn't, and then run from there?
Yeah, I do. I really do believe that courses, guides, coaches, they're valuable. They're worth their weight in gold. I mean, because they allow you to shortcut, what's going on. And I didn't hire anybody to help me with that, but I bought, paid for some guides. I watched a ton of YouTube videos, and I'm a good observer. So I just get up there and I would spend the whole day on that platform. How's it work, and what happens, and what sells, and how do they sell it, and who's the best, right? Find the best person in that category and copy them, but make it better. So you find the best, and then look and say, well, their descriptions are not good or whatever, or they're shipping, they don't ship, they take 3 or 4 days to ship. Man, I ship in 24 hours. They have eight pictures, I'm going to have 12. They sell this bag for $500. I'm going to sell it for $479. They have 50,000 followers. How do I get to 100,000? You're just trying to make it better, constantly. My boxes, I'm going to buy these cool boxes. So, when everybody opens a box, because your box is like your salesperson, right? There's the only physical contact you're going to have with the e-commerce customer. So the box has got to be, the out of box experience has to be amazing. So when they open it up, especially handbags to women, which I did not know this, very emotional, and can really help them and make them feel more confident, and this kind of thing is a really interesting concept. And I learned this because they told me. And so when you package something really nice, and there's a big thank you note and maybe a little gift, and the feedback you get and the reviews that they leave you, so if the best person on the platform has 300 reviews and theirs is 4.6, well, I want 500 reviews, and I want to be 4.9 or 5.0. So that's what I focused on, and buying better, just buying better and better and better. And then data. I'm a data guy. So I built a database, and I track every single bit of data that I can. What colors are most popular? Which brands obviously sell the best? What styles? What sizes? You learn little things like, if you buy bags at an auction or whatever, and it doesn't have a shoulder strap, forget it. It's a loser, because even if they never use a shoulder strap, when you advertise it, that's the one question they're going to ask. Where's your shoulder strap? Where's your shoulder? This kind of thing. So you learn lots of little things. You kind of, I engrossed myself into this for a year and really learned a lot, so that the next 24 months it was like that whole year I had like pulled the slingshot back, pull. And then after, man, eventually I just let it go, and it just exponentially, went through the roof. It's crazy.
Wow. Is this still a business that's part of your portfolio today?
No. I just got bored. And I had some potential buyers. I got bored. And so I had people, I want to buy your business, but my stuff's still up there, and I still have some legacy things. And I donate a ton. There's a great organization called One Purse down in Florida that helps women. And I've donated hundreds and hundreds of bags down to them. And so I was just ready for something else. So that's right. After that, I said, didn't do much for a while. I own some real estate. I have some projects that we work on there, some development stuff, but yeah, it's not too exciting. But then I got involved in X and it went crazy.
Okay, we're gonna get to that in a minute, but you had mentioned that you had another business because you got bored, mind you, but it was in the watch area. So, what? Tell us a little bit about this hustle that turned into, I'm sure, a booming business.
That one's, it's kind of stayed a side hustle because I don't know anything about watches, but I got approached by a company that I was buying some other stuff, and they said, "Hey, we have a problem. We have this category. It's kind of sensitive. We want it handled in a certain way." And I was like, "Okay, what is it?" And they said, "Well, it's watches." Like, and I said, "I don't know anything about watches." And I said, "What, like Timex, Seiko?" And they're like, "No, like Breitling and Cartier and Rolex and all these high end things." It's was like, okay, so I knew them very well, and I know how to do research. So after they talked to me, I started on the phones and calling people and getting, going out to New York, going to the jewelry district, walking around, talking to people. And what I found is that nobody would believe me. I had no credibility in that business, right? And they were right. They didn't know me. So I would say, "Look, I have this stuff," and they would go, "No, you don't. You don't have." And it's like, "Okay, I really do," but nobody would talk to me. So I went back on eBay and I found who's the best, who's doing the best here, who's selling the most of these brands. And I started reaching out to them. And the same thing, most of them didn't believe me. But I found one person, one guy. And I said, "Look, I have this opportunity. Uh, I don't know anything about this business. I want to facilitate it for my supplier because I'm buying a bunch of other stuff from them. And I want to keep that relationship going and help them." So he said, "Okay, what do you got?" I sent him the first list that I had already bought, and he sent his partner out the next day. He flew out from New York and looked at it. Big bodybuilding, kind of Russian Chechny looking dude, and he shook my hand and he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah, we'll take it." And so they sent me a wire transfer. So the issue with this business, the challenge was I couldn't have done it when I was young, as I didn't have the resources because it was a lot. I mean, it was like these watch loads each were like 250,000, 400,000, and it was every week. And these were returns. I'm not buying brand new stuff. I don't live in that world. I live in the scratch and dent, the store return, the overstock. That's where the money's at in my life. And so it was a great lesson in letting other people make most of the money, because what I brought to the table was the relationship, the logistics, and the finance, the cash. I had the capital to pay for these things every week. What this other person had, this guy Dimitri, he had a watch business, a jewelry business, so he could move this product, and so I didn't need to make a lot of money, and I just I just handled those three things for them, and he made the lion's share of the profit. And I think we've done about $8 million in sales over the last 7 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So $8 million in sales. I imagine your margins sounds like they're fairly thin on that, but
Tiny
still
for me, tiny for them. Much bigger.
good, but still worth it enough for you to where it's like,
Oh,
yeah, I'll do it.
absolutely, absolutely.
I
Because the
mean,
volume,
yeah.
you get enough, and you can do really well in single digits, margins, because I would get the product, I inspect it, and then I would overnight it to my customer, and that I'd get paid, and that was done until the next load, until the next, over and over, and we just did it over and over and over again, and it's been great. It's very different now. It's the watch market's very different than it was. The watch companies have gotten very efficient, and they're in the secondary market now. So it's more difficult, but still great. It happens. It's just a little less volume, and the key is the opportunity and thinking. Like, at first glance, you look at this and go, "I have no idea. How would I do this?" Well, you just have to start doing research and finding people. And I came full circle of, again, it brought me all the way back to eBay, right? Because eBay is just the best laboratory on the planet. And so I found just the best people there, and I just kept calling them until I found the right person that was willing to take a little bit of risk and do this deal.
So you may have answered my next question, but I find myself curious. Did each opportunity lead to the next? Whereas you were in handbags, and then was it a connection through handbags that led you to watches, and
No.
or was it electronics that you met someone there that introduced you to handbags, or was it still back to that boredom and that curiosity of that looks interesting? Let me research that. And then it sounds like you just hopped on the phones or email and just found as many connections as you could to get yourself
Yeah.
into that market.
One thing does lead to another. You just learn the system. I learned that, like, when I want to meet people at a company that I know they have products I want to buy, I go on LinkedIn and I start connecting with them and see, who do I know that knows this guy? Who do I know that knows this buyer? Every company has overstock. Every company has problems to solve. And if you can help them solve those problems, you can be a hero. You know, when I reach out, I don't ask to buy the best product they have, because that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to sell an iPhone because it's like the perfect product. But can you sell me your broken iPhones? Can you sell me just the parts? Can you sell what junk do you have? That's your in. Is like, hey, what do you have that nobody else will buy? I'll buy that. And that's your start. Even if you throw that away. And I did that at the beginning of the handbag business. You just you have to throw them away. I was getting bags that people had like thrown up in. It was gross. But I knew that you're kind of paying your tuition, right? You're like, okay, now they know me. I have their phone number. I know this dude. I can call him all the time and go, hey. And after 3-4 months, you go, man, I bought all that garbage. What can you throw me a bone? What else do you have? That's how you make it your input, because you're solving a problem. And I was donating those garbage bags, to another group that loved them because they got nothing and they got them for free, and I just wrote them off. So it does lead one thing to the next, but it's more about what you're learning in that process, and having the confidence to get on the phone and call 87 companies. It's like cold calling, but you're doing it from a purchasing side. All my wealth has been built from what I bought, not from what I sold, because the sales are easy. It's the buying that's the hard part. People miss it. You have to invert it.
So you said that's the hard part, and I know why for multiple reasons, but in my mind, as somebody who's done plenty of cold calling in the past, instead of me calling you asking for your money, I'm calling you saying I have money and I want
Take
to
my
give
money.
it to you. Like,
Well,
that's got to
yeah.
be a much different conversation, am I right?
It is, but you find you get the same excuses why they won't. I don't
Really?
want to buy your. Yeah, because they're getting inundated with people that want to buy this stuff.
Mm,
If it's hot, the reason I'm calling you is because I know there's profit in this product. But I'm trying to use a different technique and sneak my way in and sound different than every other call and every other email that they're getting. Right.
right. So
That's the technique.
there's still nuance. It's just slightly different.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work. They only sell you the garbage forever. So finally you have to just go, oh, I can't buy from you anymore.
Right.
So you just have to try it out and see. And then I go back to studying who's doing it the best. Who is the best seller in whatever category you want, and just dig into them and pull their data, and track it, put it in a spreadsheet and go, okay, well, that guy sold it for this and this, and where'd it come from? Look at the photos. I mean, sometimes you can look and go, man, that's a Target sticker. How'd that guy buy that from Target? And then you can start researching that. What does Target sell? Well, did you know that Target has a liquidation website where they sell gazillions of dollars of overstock, store return, and excess inventory? You should go buy from them. All that, it's a thought process.
Right. It's opportunity begetting opportunity, right?
Yes, correct.
And you led right into the liquidation side. That's where I wanted to chat with you about next was your experience in these liquidation websites, auction websites. And that's, I'm on your email list, which I suggest everybody hops on that. We'll make sure we know how to get everybody on that list by the end of the show here. But you talk a lot about your auction business now. So let's talk about that one for a few minutes, because that one is really interesting to me, because it sounds like it's something where there's an open field of opportunity, but correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there's not a ton of players in it.
Well, there's a ton of interest,
A ton
but
of
the
interest.
the people that will actually take action is very small, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of folks, just like any starting a side hustle or whatever. A lot of people think about it. Oh, I could certainly use an extra couple $1,000s a month or whatever it is. But will you sit down from 10 to midnight for a year and do it? Most people won't, right? So what I try to show up on X in on my newsletter is, here's all this opportunity, and here is how to take advantage of it. You have to be smart in the way you buy. You have to do it in reverse. You have to build out models and spreadsheets that uh, inform and educate you on whether it's a good deal or not. But I posted today about we were talking about Target. That's what I thought of this. There's like $39,000 worth of um, outdoor gear, Blackstone grills, other kind of barbecues, camping, stuff. Because seasonal arbitrage is a very important part of the liquidation business. We're ending summer here, going into fall and winter. So all these companies have this stuff they have to get rid of, and they don't have. Yeah, they can put stuff on sale, but eventually it just doesn't sell, so they liquidate it. So you're buying that product in this case, but it was like 39,000. I think when I checked an hour or so ago, it was sitting at like $2,000, and yeah, $34,000 worth, and it's sitting at $2,314 right now, brand new product. So I just say, how could you not make money on this, right? If you
Yeah.
put the time and effort. It's not a uh, you know passive income, hands off. No, it's, you have to get your hands dirty. You're going to be sorting, or maybe you can hire somebody if your business grows. Now, this is an entire truckload. I would not recommend this for someone just getting started. It's too much.
Yeah, you
But
need an 18 wheeler backing up to your driveway
you
with
got it. You got it. But
$30,000 worth of Blackstones, right?
correct. But you can buy a pallet of this stuff and then experiment with it. Or, maybe you buy a pallet of health and beauty stuff. Some of this, like 2 ounce of like face cream for women sells for like three, four, $500. It's like, how can there not be money in that for
Yeah.
guys like us, right? How can there not be money in that? So studying this stuff and looking at it and thinking, can I sell this on eBay? What does it sell for now on eBay? And how do I sell it better? How do I be a better eBay seller? How do I sell it on Facebook Marketplace? Who does the best? How do I copy them? I can do better than them, right? You take more photos, you get better feedback.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
more responsive, right? You just have to hustle. And so
Yeah.
if you can do that, you can create a business, and you can create. I mean, I know a guy that I did some coaching with that's, selling, flipping couches and making 10 grand a month, profit, which scares me to death because it's a giant item to do. But
Yeah.
there, there are people doing it. And so I like talking about it. When I got started on X, January, I had like 530 followers, and I didn't really know what I talked about entrepreneurship and my businesses and everything. But it wasn't till I really started talking about, I reached about 15,000 followers, I think, by August. And
Wow.
I started talking about auctions and liquidations, and I hit 30,000 followers the first week of September. And so my audience is telling me what they want to hear and what they want to learn
Yeah.
about. So I'm like, okay, I'll figure this out. How do I help these people? And I'll create a guide. I'll do this because I can't answer the same questions over and over again. And then I'll take my book and I'll pull it apart and make it more of a course type format to help you along. And I really enjoy it. It's educating people. Like I said, boredom is the enemy for me. And now I'm totally energized about what I've been doing forever, my entire life. I was buying storage locker auctions when I was in college, with my girlfriend. And so who's now my wife. Um, so yeah, I love dealing with this stuff because it's accessible to everyone. You don't have to spend, I mean, even this, this auction, this Target thing has an hour left and it's still at 2,300 bucks. So maybe it sells for, I bet you it'll sell for under $5,000 where it kind of should be. But there's other stuff up there on the Costco liquidation site, Home Depot, Target, all these places that sells, things sell for a few $100s. So you can experiment with and play around and put in the reps to learn this stuff because it is a system. It's not, I bought this, it's a great price, so I'm going to automatically make money. It's not that. It's what how do you move, how do you present it and where do you sell it? All that kind of stuff. It's a system.
Right, right. And you're piquing my interest too because I love selling on Facebook Marketplace. It's mostly stuff that either my kids grow out of or we don't need anymore but a couple years ago I started getting into it kind of like you are where I was like someone's selling this thing like it was the free stuff. People list
Yeah.
stuff for free and I'd be like
Yep.
I'm just going to go pick that up and cuz I know that's worth at least $35, right?
Yeah,
Or
right.
50 bucks.
Sure.
So I'd go pick it up and then I'd flip it within 2 days. And I'd be like, sweet, that's
Yeah.
like, restaurant money this week if I
Exactly.
want to go
That's
take my
exactly
wife
right.
out.
Yep.
But you can put that on steroids and start growing your way up into it. And this is like even an unofficial business in a phone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all done with the phone in your hand.
Of
And
course.
then a little bit of manual labor to go pick it up or claim it, whatever. And you probably like I don't want to put out bad advice, but
Yeah.
you don't need an LLC to sell on Facebook Marketplace,
No,
or
no.
go buy a product from a liquidation site. So it's
What you need is a resale permit. That's the only
Right.
thing you need. And so that's easy to get, just search your state plus resale permit. You can get one. It doesn't cost anything. And you're exactly right. And what I love about that is it takes no money to start. Just, I'm going to have a guy on our podcast who runs I think he's got 3 locations now, a bin store. And he started that way. He's just selling stuff around his house. And then it's like, well, where can I buy more? Because this works. And, walk around your house or your garage and what can I sell on eBay or Facebook Marketplace? And what works? What kind of photographs work? What's the best description? That's how you learn. And your risk is so low that if you really put in the time, but you have to make a decision to do it. You can't just want it. You have to decide, like, I'm going to do this, man. And if, I'm not watching Netflix anymore. I'm going to not watch every football game on Sunday. I'm going to go out my garage. I'm going to build a little photo booth. I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to learn how to do descriptions. I'm going to research. I'm going to learn how to make a database so I can track all this stuff. That's what it takes. But I can tell you, I have the luxury of telling my story in reverse, which makes me sound way smarter than I am because I'm not. I just don't give up and I chase things and figure out, will that work? Will that not? And as I built up resources, I could take more risk. So you could, invest a bunch of money if I'm going to start a software company, which is ridiculously stupid. But then it allowed me to publish a book. And then I was like, oh, this is how I had to learn how to become a book publisher and how does the Amazon system work and Apple and how do you build what tools do you use to become a best-selling author? And then I learned that and it's like, oh, you could do these. So it's very easy to start, man, is once you make that decision.
I think it's the effect of there's the term compound interest, but I like to call it compound effort.
I like
When
that.
you commit to something, you put that effort in, it compounds. Even if you're doing something really tiny every single day towards your goal, maybe it's 5 minutes worth of watching a YouTube video or building a little, photo studio. And then that's your thing you did today.
Yep.
It compounds over time. And I think one of the big things you said, it sounded like just about every business is you said, I dedicated a year to it and then it started taking off. But it takes that year, that dedication and that effort, and then the compound effect on top of it.
Yeah,
and that's what gets
absolutely.
you there. You strike me as a man of massive action. And I think I probably beat this horse to an absolute pulp on this show, but I think it's so true. And I think it's the basis of all entrepreneurial endeavors is it all starts with a single step. You got to take the action. And you're living proof of that.
Yeah, I don't, for me, I just never felt like I had any alternative, right? Everything I wanted was on the other side of taking that action. So I walk around, I know they say you shouldn't be materialistic, but hey, I want material things. When I wanted to buy a new truck, I didn't go borrow and buy a new truck. I said, everything I want is on the other side of the next deal. how do I do this? And I still do it even now, and like, oh, I want to buy an excavator for this property we have up in the mountains. I'm going to buy an excavator, but I'm not paying it with assets. I'm okay. Everything you want is on the other side of creating this thing that is going to sell. Everything, all these kinds of things. It's a mental trick. But if you teach yourself that, it drives you forward. It's like you have this constant carrot in front of you. I have a terrible case of the I wants. And so it'll either bankrupt me or make me very successful. And thankfully it's done the latter. So it
Yeah.
works. It
I love
works.
that. Everything you want is on the other side of action.
Yep.
Well,
It's
that might
true.
be a good place to put a bow on this because you and I could probably go for another 2 hours here and have a hell of a good time doing it. But I want to make sure I stay within our allotted time here.
Yeah, it's great.
So, Shannon, as we wrap up, if you could distill your experience, maybe all the boredom that has led to all this experience, if you could distill it down into a single piece of advice for our listeners today, what do you think that would be?
I would say don't be afraid. Push yourself and just don't. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. If you're worried about what other people think, just don't talk about it. That's another trick. Just keep it to yourself. Talk about what you did, not what you're going to do. But don't be afraid. I still have fear of trying new things. I mean, it's in all of us. But it'll never be easier to take the action and try it than it is today. Because as you grow and you build, your family, you're about to grow your family more. You are constrained. So do it now. Do it as soon as you can, and just don't let fear hold you back.
Yep. Don't let fear hold you back and take that action. I think we'll
Yeah.
bookend that. I think that ends it
Awesome.
perfectly. So, Shannon, man, this has been fantastic. I think we have all sorts of golden nuggets that our fans and listeners can take home and take to the bank and go get their entrepreneurial journeys underway or on track, whatever it might be. So this has been fantastic. I want to make sure that all our listeners today can get a hold of you if they'd like to learn from
Sure.
you. If they want to follow you, where can they follow you? Where can they get your book? We'll name your podcast here again, and how they get on your email list. I love being on your
Yeah.
newsletter.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I love doing that too. So thank you for having me on. I love talking about this stuff. This is, I could do this all day. So just up on X, it's at Shannon Jean, ShannonJean. And if you go up there, you can see there's a subscribe link right in my bio to get into my Unconventional Entrepreneur newsletter. And that's a great place to start. If you have questions, send me a DM, follow me first so I see your DM, and I'm happy to answer questions, provide resources. I love doing this stuff. And, I have a lot more gray hair than you, so I get to give back now, which is great. And it's awesome, that we're just surrounded by opportunity, man, for sure.
Abundance is everywhere. We got to go find it and take it. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you
Oh,
again.
fantastic. Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Shannon, you have a great one. I can't wait to chat with you again in the future.
Thanks, Brian.